guys, it's Lotus, and welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to jump right into Chapter 6 of Erha. Previously, we have not seen Shizun yet, but based on the title of Chapter 6, it looks like he will finally make his appearance. Again, as a reminder, be wary of the warnings and the explicit content that will come in the future, and if it makes you uncomfortable, then this book might not be for you. Okay, let's get started with Chapter 6. Chapter 6, This Venerable One's Shizun. Shuemeng had grown up on Shisheng Peak and knew all of its ins and outs and shortcuts, and so in the end, he still managed to capture Moran. After arresting him, he dragged him to the back of the mountain. The entire back mountain of Shisheng Peak was the closest place the mortal realm was to the ghost realm. Between the two realms lay a barrier, and beyond that barrier was the underworld. Taking a look at the appalling state of the barrier, Moran immediately knew why, even though that person was home, it was still Madame Wang who had appeared in the main hall to greet and receive the audience. It wasn't that that person didn't want to help, it was that he really couldn't step away. The barrier of the ghost realm had ruptured. At this very moment, the entire back of the mountain was permeated with the essence of evil. Spirits that had yet to form a solid body swirled in the air, wailing in despair, their howling full of rancor. At the entrance to the mountain gates, a giant breach could be seen, ripped open in the sky. Behind that breach lay the ghost realm with a long blue stone staircase, thousands of steps high, extending from the fissure of the barrier. Menacing ghosts that had already cultivated a flesh form crawled down in great numbers, creeping from the ghost realm to the mortal realm. If it were a normal person seeing this sight, they would no doubt freak out, terrified. Moran had been soaked with the cold sweat of fear the first time he'd seen something like this, but he'd long since gotten used to it. The barrier between the mortal and the ghost realms had been first built by Emperor Fuxi in ancient times. It had become thin and weakened through the passage of time, often cracking and breaking in various places, needing the repair of cultivated immortals. However, a task like this not only did not elevate one's cultivation by much, but it was also incredibly taxing on one's spiritual power. To work so hard for nothing was an arduous chore, and so not many cultivators in the cultivation world were willing to pick up the burden. When menacing spirits entered the world, the ones they attacked first were the common people of the lower cultivation world. As the protectors of the lower cultivation world, Shisheng Peak thus took on the job of repairing barriers. The mountains at the back of their sect faced the weakest point of the barrier, all for the sake of being able to do such repairs in time. This ragged barrier would fail at least 4 or 5 times a year, just like a leaky second-hand pot. Useless. A man stood at the entrance to the ghost realm, atop the bluestone staircase. His snow-white robes fluttered, his expansive sleeves flew in the wind, and the aura of his blade enveloped him, its golden light shimmering. By his powers alone, he was sweeping up those menacing spirits, cleaning those evil ghosts away, repairing the breach in the barrier. That man was slender in form and elegant in appearance, with an aura of transcendent holiness and a face that was exceedingly handsome and beautiful. From afar, it would be easy to imagine him as a scholar of dignity, standing beneath a blossoming tree, studying a scroll from an otherworldly, studious air. But up close, his expression was as sharp as a blade. His phoenix eyes slanted upwards. His nose was straight and narrow. He had the very appearance of sophistication and refined manners, but there was something acerbic to his gaze, giving him a particularly cold and cruel look. It's Shizun. Moran watched him from a distance. Although he'd thought himself prepared, if he were to be honest, to see that person appear once more before him, healthy and well, made him tremble down to the smallest fragments of his bones. Half dread, half thrill. His Shizun, Chu Wan Ning, the person that Shuemeng had cried and begged to see when he'd come to Wushan Palace in the previous life. It had been this man who'd ruined Moran's grand plans. He'd ruined Moran's ambitious ideals and had, in the end, been imprisoned and tortured to death by Moran. Technically, Moran should have been glad to defeat an opponent and get the chance to avenge himself. The ocean was free for fish to swim, the sky open for birds to fly, and no longer could anyone stop him. Originally, Moran had thought he would think this way. However, things did not turn out that way. After Shizun's death, something else seemed to have been buried, together with Moran's hatred. Moran wasn't a man of culture, and did not recognize that something else as the feeling of being evenly matched with a worthy opponent. He only knew that, from then, he had no more arch enemies in this world. When Shizun had been alive, Moran had been scared, afraid, anxious. The moment he saw the willow vine in Shizun's hands, his entire body would break out in goosebumps, just like how the mere sound of a wooden club's knocking would make an oft-beaten dog shrink back. Teeth aching and legs giving way, drool leaking from the corner of its lips. Even the muscles of his calves would spasm from nervousness. He must be well acquainted with Shizun's whip. With Shizun's death, the person Moran feared the most had passed away. Moran felt like he'd grown up, matured, that he was finally able to commit the sin of murdering his mentor. After that, when his eyes swept through the mortal world, there was no longer anyone who dared force him to kneel, no longer anyone who dared slap him in the face. To celebrate, he opened a pot of pear blossom white wine and sat on the rooftops drinking for an entire night. That night, under the influence of alcohol, the scars on his back from being whipped by Shizun in his youth felt like they were brand new, burning once more with fresh pain. At this very moment, seeing with his own eyes his Shizun standing once more before him, Moran couldn't help but stare, feeling both fear and resentment, but also the faintest trace of a twisted sort of ecstasy. To have regained such an opponent after having lost him, how could he not be delighted? Chu Wanning was completely focused on fighting the scattered souls of the dead, ignoring the two disciples who had intruded the back of the mountains. He had an elegant face. His brows were long and even, and his phoenix eyes were cast downwards, his demeanor graceful, dignified, and otherworldly. His expression was unchanged, cool and distant even in the face of demonic air and bloody rain. It would not have looked strange or out of place if he were to sit down on the spot to light incense and play the guqin. However, this graceful and somber man was currently wielding a chilling long exorcist sword that dripped with blood. With a single flick of his expansive sleeve, the force of his blade sliced through the verdant stone steps with an explosion. Rubble and debris tumbled down, and a rift of indiscernible depth split into that staircase with its thousands of steps, from the mountain gates at the top, all the way down to the bottom of the mountain. Such brutal ferocity! How many years had it been since he'd last witnessed Shizun's strength? That familiar, valiant, overbearing force made Moran's legs weak out of habit. Unsteady, he dropped to his knees onto the ground. It didn't take Chu Wanning too much time to annihilate all the ghosts and neatly fill the leaking hole to the ghost realm. After completing his task, he descended from the sky lightly and languidly, landing before Moran and Shuemeng. He first glanced at Moran, kneeling on the ground, before looking up to Shuemeng, his phoenix eyes somewhat icy. Cause trouble again? Moran had to concede. Shizun possessed an ability, one that let him assess a situation and come immediately to the most accurate judgment. Shizun, Moran went down the mountain and committed the crimes of thievery and debauchery. Shizun, please deal out his punishment, Shuemeng said. Chu Wanning was silent for a moment, expression completely blank, and then he said coldly, I see. Moran, ... Shuemeng's also nervous. Both of them were a little taken aback. And then? Was that it? Yet, just as Moran was starting to think he'd gotten off lucky, he stole a glimpse at Wanning and was caught entirely off his guard as he saw a flash of sharp golden light slashing through the air violently. A lightning-like crackle whipped directly onto Moran's cheek. Splatters of blood blossomed everywhere. The speed of that golden light was too shocking. Never mind dodging, Moran didn't even have the time to close his eyes before the flesh of his face was slashed open, the wound burning painfully. Ooh. Chu Wanning stood coldly in the deadly breeze of the deep night, with his hands clasped behind his back. The air was still filthy and thick with the stench of menacing spirits. With the addition of the smell of freshly spilt human blood, It made the forbidden grounds of the back mountain even more eerie and horrifying. The thing that had whipped Moran was a willow vine, which had appeared from out of nowhere into Chu Ning's hand. The vine hung all the way down to Chu Ning's boots and was long and thin, with tender green leaves sprouting along it. The vine was undoubtedly an elegant object, one that would have called to mind verses of poetry, like, "Pliant is the willow branch I gift to my beloved." Unfortunately, Chu Ning was neither pliant nor in possession of a beloved. The willow vine in his hand was actually a holy weapon called Tianwen. At this very moment, Tianwen was sparkling with a bright golden and crimson light, illuminating the darkness all around, as well as the bottomless depths of Chu Ning's eyes, bringing him to life. Chu Ning's lips pressed thin as he said, voice chilly, "Mo Wei you sure are brazen. Did you really think I wouldn't discipline you?" If this was really the 16-year-old Moran, he might not have taken Chu Ning's words seriously, thinking that Shizun was only bluffing to scare him. However, the Mo Wei Yu who had been reborn had long since in his previous life paid the blood price to learn just what his Shizun's discipline was like. Immediately, he could feel the roots of his teeth aching and blood rushing to his head. His mouth was already running, aggressively denying everything, hoping to clear his name. "Shizun!" Cheek still bleeding, Moran raised his eyes, letting them fill with the sheen of tears. He knew that his current disposition was exceedingly pathetic and pitiful. This disciple has never stolen, has never committed debauchery. How come Shizun hits me purely on the basis of Shuemeng's word, without even having asked my side of the story? Against his uncle, Moran had two ultimate tricks. Number 1, to act cute. Number 2, to act pitiful. He now turned both moves onto Chu Ning, looking so aggrieved that tears threatened to spill. Is this disciple really so worthless in your eyes? How come Shizun won't even give me a chance to explain? Next to him, Shuemeng was so incensed that he stomped his foot. Moran, you piece of dog's leg! You're shameless! Shizun, don't listen to him! Don't let this bastard confuse you! He really did steal! All the stolen property is still here! Chu Ning lowered his eyes, his expression cool and distant. Moran, have you really never committed theft? Never? You should know what the consequences of lying to me are. Moran's entire body broke out in goose flesh. How could he not know? Still, he remained stubborn as a mule. Shizun, please investigate! Chu Ning raised his hand. That shimmering vine came sweeping again, this time not to whip Moran's face. Instead, it bound itself tightly around Moran. This sensation was way too familiar. Other than whipping people on the daily, the willow vine Tianwen had another use. Chu Ning stared at Moran, who was held in Tianwen's death grip, and asked once more, "Have you never committed theft?" Suddenly, all Moran could feel was a familiar agony piercing straight into his heart, as if a sharp-fanged little snake had suddenly slithered its way into his chest and was causing havoc amidst his organs. Accompanying the stabbing pain was an irresistible temptation. Moran's mouth opened in spite of himself, and he said hoarsely, "I have never, ah!" Tianwen's golden light went berserk, as if it could sense he was lying. But though the pain was enough to drench Moran in cold sweat, he still resisted this torture with all he had. After whipping, this was Tianwen's second function, interrogation. Once bound by Tianwen, none could lie before it. No matter whether it was human or ghost, alive or dead, Tianwen had the ability to force them to speak, giving Chu Ning the answers he demanded. There was only one person in the previous life who had, relying on his strong cultivation, finally managed to achieve the feat of keeping a secret from Tianwen. And that person was the one who had become the emperor of the mortal world, Mo Wei Yu. The freshly reborn Moran had high hopes, and thought he should still be able to fight against Tianwen's forceful interrogation like he'd once been able to. But after what felt like an eternity of biting down on his lips, giant beads of sweat dripping down his inky dark brows, and full-body shivers racking through him, in the end, he was left prostrate from pain, kneeling at Chu Ning's feet, gasping out heavy breaths. I did steal. The pain disappeared abruptly. Moran hadn't even caught his breath before Chu Ning's next question came, his voice sounding colder than before. Did you commit debauchery? Clever men don't do stupid deeds. Since he hadn't been able to hold on earlier, then it was even more impossible now. This time, Moran didn't even bother to object. The moment the pain came, he cried, I have! Shizun, please, no more! At the side, Shuemeng's face was just about turning blue, and he said, shocked, How could you? That wronged you was a man, and yet you... He went ignored as Tianwen's golden light slowly dimmed. Moran sucked in large mouthfuls of air, his entire body drenched like he'd just been fished up from water. His face was white as a sheet, and his lips trembled uncontrollably as he lay on the ground, unable to move. Through his sweat-drenched lashes, he could see Chuanning's blurry yet elegant silhouette, with its green jade crown and expansive sleeves that draped to the ground. A wave of powerful hatred suddenly coursed through his heart. Chuanning, this venerable one, hadn't been wrong in treating you the way he had in the previous life. Even coming back to life, the very sight of you is enough to annoy me. F all 18 generations of your ancestors. Chuanning was not aware that his beast of a disciple was going to F all 18 generations of his ancestors. He stood where he was for the moment, face gloomy. Then he said, Shuemeng. Even though Shuemeng knew that currently it was trendy for wealthy houses to find pleasure in the male form, that many enjoyed playing with boy prostitutes because it was refreshing, that it didn't mean they actually liked men, he still found that fact rather difficult to swallow. It took him a moment to reply. Shizun, this disciple is present. Moran has transgressed the 3 mandates against greedy thievery, debauchery, and deception. Take him to Yanlo Hall for penance. Bring him to the platform of sin and virtue first thing tomorrow morning to be punished before all. Shuemeng was shocked. What? To be punished before all? To be punished before all meant that the disciple that had committed grave sins would be dragged before all the disciples of the sect, to be sentenced and punished in front of everyone. Even the grannies in the cafeteria would be brought over. Completely disgraceful. It should be known that Moran was a young master of Shisheng Peak. Although the rules of the sect could be said to be strict, because Moran's status was special, his uncle felt sorry that he'd lost his parents since young and that he had been stranded outside for a whole 14 years. He would always defend Moran out of indulgence. Even if Moran made mistakes, he would still only lecture privately and had never once beaten him. But Shizun would not save even the sect leader's face, and would actually drag his precious nephew to the platform of sin and virtue, would punish and shame Mo Gongzi before the entire sect. This was something Shuemeng had never expected. Moran, on the other hand, wasn't surprised at all. He lay on the ground, his lips curling into a sneer. Look how righteous his Shizun was, so full of justice. Chuanning was a cold-blooded person. In the previous life, Shimei had died before his very eyes. Moran had cried and pleaded, tugged at the hems of his robes, knelt on the ground, begged for his help. But Chuanning had turned a deaf ear. And so his disciple had breathed his last breath before him, and next to him, Moran had cried his heart out. And still, Chuanning had watched on without lifting a finger. Right now, it was nothing more than being dragged to the platform of sin and virtue to be sentenced in public. There was nothing out of the ordinary about this. Moran could only resent his current self's weak cultivation. He resented that he couldn't peel off Chuanning's skin, pull out his nerves, drink his blood. Resented that he couldn't yank Chuanning's hair back, couldn't violate and corrupt him to his heart's content, couldn't torment him, destroy his dignity, make him live a life worse than death. The beast-like savagery in his eyes let slip for a moment, and Chuanning caught a glimpse of it. He glanced lightly across Moran's face, his own graceful, scholarly face completely devoid of expression. What are you thinking about? Shit! Tianwen hadn't been withdrawn yet. Moran could once again feel the vine that bound him squeeze and twist, his organs feeling like they were going to wrench into mush. He screamed in agony, letting loose the thoughts in his mind. Oh no! Chuanning! Think you're so tough? Watch me F you to death. Oh no. All was silent. Oh, Chuanning, Shizun, oh my gosh, Moran. Even Shuemeng was dumbfounded. Tianwen suddenly returned to Chuanning's palm, transforming into specks of golden light before eventually disappearing out of sight. Tianwen was made from Chuaning's bones and blood, and could appear when summoned and disappeared at will. Shuemeng's face was pale as he stammered, Shizun! Chuaning didn't speak. His long, inky, delicate lashes were lowered as he looked at his own palm for a long moment. Then he raised his eyes, face unmoved other than his expression being slightly icier than before. He pinned Moran with a glare that said, "This beastly disciple deserves death," for a long moment before speaking, voice low as he said, "Tianwen is broken. I'm going to fix it." After throwing out such words, Chuaning turned around and left. Shuemeng wasn't a bright child. How could a holy weapon like Tianwen be broken? Chuaning heard him. He turned and once again used that "this beastly disciple deserves death" gaze to glance back at him. Shuemeng felt a chill run down his spine. Moran lay on the ground, half dead, his expression lifeless. Earlier, he really had been thinking about finding a chance to F Chuaning to death. He was well aware that this Chu Zhongzi, with his titles like Yu Heng of the Night Sky, Beidou Immortal, was someone who always paid attention to refined, elegant manners and dignity. What he really couldn't bear was to be quashed beneath someone's foot, to be sullied and oppressed. But how could he let Chuaning find something like this out? Moran howled pathetically like an abandoned dog, covering his face. Ugh, even he's embarrassed of himself. Recalling Chuaning's eyes as he left, Moran felt like he probably didn't have long to live. Oh, author's note. Okay. Shizun is finally here. Do not board the wrong ship. Do not assume the wrong position. Shizun is bottom, bottom, bottom. Ink feed fish. Upon a Moeyu is the top. The MC is the bottom. Meatbun, why did your legs go weak when you saw Shizun? Aren't you the top? Where is your top energy? Moran, old age, arthritis. Meatbun, speak properly. Moran, can you stop emphasizing my 32-year-old soul in the story? After reincarnation, I became supple. I'm an innocent and energetic youth. Meatbun, then how do you still have arthritis? This little tidbit at the end with the author's note is really cute. Okay, so that's the end of chapter 6. So in this chapter, we finally got to meet Chuaning. He was busy sealing some the ghost barrier. And of course, he found out what Moran had done. Thievery and debauchery, and Moran got beaten up by Shizun's whip, Tianwen. Because Tianwen is like a lie detector, Moran accidentally exposed something really embarrassing. So anyway, let's see what happens in chapter 7. Chapter 7, this venerable one likes wontons. The sun blazed down from above. Shisheng Peak's veranda stretched out for 100 miles. As a newcomer among the cultivation sects, it was different from the other famed sects of the upper cultivation realm. Take, for example, Rufeng's sect of Linyi. Their main hall was named Six Virtues Hall to encourage the disciples to be wise, faithful, holy, righteous, benevolent, and loyal. The disciples resided in an area called Six Demeanor Gate, reminding the disciples to be filial, cordial, harmonious, martial, responsible, and compassionate toward one another. And the area of study was named Six Arts Platform, meaning that disciples were expected to be masters in ritual, music, archery, writing, calligraphy, and arithmetics. In other words, endless elegance. On the other hand, Shisheng Peak came from an impoverished background, and its names were hard to explain to say the least. Loyalty Hall and Platform of Sin and Virtue were still acceptable. Perhaps it was because Moran's father and uncle weren't exactly scholars and couldn't choke out many decent names. But towards the end, they started to get nonsensical, assigning Shui Ya-esque names left and right. Thus, Shisheng Peak had many names plagiarized from the underworld. Oh no. For example, the self-reflection room was called Yanlo Hall. The bridge connecting the recess and study rooms were called Nai Bridge. The dining hall was called Mengpo Hall. The training field was called Mountain of Daggers and Sea of Flames. The forbidden area behind the mountain was called Ghost Zone, and so on and so forth. At least these were relatively acceptable. The more out-of-the-way areas were bluntly named. This is mountain, this is water, this is a hole, as well as the famed and Wah cliffs. Oh no! Who named it this? Oh my gosh. How unrefined. The quarters of the elders naturally did not escape unscathed, and each had their own nicknames. And naturally, Chu Wanning was no exception. He liked peace and quiet and did not want to live near others. His residence was located at the southern summit of Shishong Peak, hidden in a bamboo grove like an ocean of jade. There was a pond before the main hall, covered in blooming red lotuses throughout the seasons, thanks to a bounty of spiritual energy resplendent as crimson clouds. The disciples secretly called this elegant and scenic place Red Lotus Hell. Oof. Thinking about it, Moran couldn't help but snicker. Chu Wanning wore a frightful and sour face day in, day out. To the disciples, seeing him was like seeing the devil himself. And what should the home of the devil be called if not hell? Xuanmeng interrupted his daydream. The hell are you giggling about? Hurry and finish your breakfast. I have to take you to the platform of sin and virtue after this. Did you forget that Shizun is going to discipline you in public today? Moran sighed and gingerly touched the lash mark on his face. Ow. Serves you right. I wonder if Tianwen has been fixed yet. Please don't interrogate me with it again. If not, who knows what other nonsense I might spout. Faced with Moran's genuine worries, Xuanmeng's face flushed with anger. He threatened, if you dare to be improper towards Shizun in public, I'll rip your tongue out. Moran covered his face with one hand and waved the other as he croaked faintly. No need, no need. If Shizun ties me up with that willow vine again, I will just end myself on the spot to prove my innocence. He'd rather die than embarrass himself again. Early in the morning, Moran was brought onto the platform of sin and virtue in accordance with customs. He cast his gaze out. Below, a sea of people stood, dressed in dark blue as far as the eye could see. The disciples of Shishong Peak were all dressed in the sect uniform, light armor so blue as to be nearly black, lion head belt, wrist guard, and clothing trimmed in sparkling silver. The sun rose from the east. Below the platform of sin and virtue, a sea of gleaming armor. Moran knelt on the high platform, listening to the J-Lu elder read the lengthy indictment. Mo Wei Yu, disciple of Yu Heng elder, disregarded commandments and ignored teachings, disrespected sect rules and abandoned morality. You have violated the 4th, 9th, and 15th mandates. As punishment, you will receive 80 strikes, copy the sect rules 100 times, and reflect in confinement for 1 month. Mo Wei Yu, have you anything to say in your defense? Moran glanced at the white silhouette in the distance. That elder was the only person in the entirety of Shishong Peak who was not required to wear the standard silver-trimmed blue uniform. Chu Wanning dressed in snow-white satin, with an outer drape of cloud-patterned silver silk, as if swathed in clear frost from the highest of the heavens. But the person himself seemed more frigid than even snow and frost. He sat calmly, too far away from Moran to see his expression, but Moran knew, without needing to see, that this person was probably entirely unperturbed. Inhaling deeply, Moran replied, I have nothing to say in my defense. Next, in accordance with custom, J-Lu Elder asked the disciples gathered below, if anyone disagrees with the judgment or has any other appeals, you may now speak. The disciples fidgeted, glancing at one another. No one had thought that Yu Heng Elder Chu Wanning would actually send his own disciple to the platform of sin and virtue to be punished in public. This, to put it politely, was strict and impartial, but, to put it frankly, was called being a cold-blooded demon. Cold-blooded demon Chu Wanning wore an air of indifference, sitting in his seat with his chin propped up. Suddenly, someone shouted, using an amplification technique, Yu Heng Elder, this disciple would like to plead for leniency on behalf of Mo Shidi. Is that so? Moran was the Peak Lord's nephew. The disciple clearly thought that, even if he blundered, his prospects were still bright and promising, and so he decided to seize the opportunity to win favor with Moran. He started to babble nonsense. Although Mo Shidi had erred, he is cordial with his fellow disciples and compassionate to the small and weak in his daily conduct, will Elder please grant leniency in view of his kind nature? He was not the only one hoping to curry favor with Mo Shidi. More and more people began to speak on Moran's behalf, on grounds fantastic and varied. Moran himself was embarrassed listening to them. When had he ever been pure and innocent, broad-minded and open? Was this assembly for punishment or commendation? He's like, who are these people? I've never even interacted with them. Yuheng Elder, Mo Shidi once helped me defeat demons and slay vicious beasts. I would like to request recognition for Mo Shidi's merits. Merits undoing demerits. Requesting Elder to lessen the punishment. Yuheng Elder, when I experienced chi deviation, it was Mo Shidi who helped me dispel my inner demons. I believe Mo Shidi only erred due to a brief lapse in judgment. Requesting Elder to lighten Shidi's punishment. Yuheng Elder, Mo Shidi once bestowed me an elixir to save my mother. He is virtuous and benevolent by nature. Elder, please be lenient. The final person's pretext had been taken by the person before him, and he was left at a loss for words. Chuaning's frosty gaze swept toward him, and he rambled out in a panic. Yuheng Elder, Mo Shidi once helped me dual cultivate. Oof, oof, all the lies. All the lies are getting more and more exaggerated. Someone failed to hold in their laughter. That disciple blushed up to his ears and withdrew in embarrassment. Yuheng Elder, calm down, calm down. Lu Elder, seeing this turn of events, hurriedly turned to soothe him. Chuaning spoke coldly. I have never seen a person this shameless. What is his name? Whose disciple? Lu hesitated slightly, then forced himself to quietly respond. My disciple, Yao Lian. Chuaning raised his eyebrows. Your disciple? Save face? This was acutely awkward for Lu Elder, whose old face was bright red as he tried to change the topic. His singing voice is not bad, useful to keep around when receiving offerings. Chuaning humped and turned away, not wanting to waste any more breath with this shameless Lu Elder. There were thousands of people in Shisheng Peak. A couple of sycophants here and there was nothing out of the ordinary. Looking at the persistent conviction of his sect brothers, even Moran himself almost began to believe them. Impressive, impressive. As it turns out, he wasn't the only one in this sect adept at spewing lies in broad daylight. This place was full of talented people. After countless pleas of Yuheng Elder, please be merciful, Chuaning finally spoke. Pleading on behalf of Mo Weiyu, he paused before continuing. Very well, come up. Unsure what to expect, those people went up with fear and trepidation. A gold light flashed in Chuaning's hand, and Tianwen appeared as commanded, wrapping the people, more than a dozen of them, into a bundle with a whoosh, binding them firmly in place. Oh, he's gonna use the lie detector on them! Not this again! Moran was about to lose all hope. The mere sight of Tianwen made his legs go soft. Where the hell had Chuaning even attained such a deviant weapon from? It was a good thing he'd never taken a wife in the previous lifetime. Pity the woman who'd get stuck with him. If she didn't get whipped to death, she'd probably be interrogated to death. Chuaning's gaze was full of scorn. He asked one from the group, Moran helped you defeat demons? The disciple had no chance against Tianwen's torment and howled immediately, No, no! Asking another one, Moran helped you break out of chi deviation? Never, never! Moran gifted you an elixir? Help, no! I made it up! I lied, I made it up! Chuaning loosened the bind, but immediately after, he raised his hand in a ruthless brandish. Sparks flew everywhere as Tianwen soared out to land brutally against the backs of those lying disciples. Shrieks were heard instantly, blood splashing. Chuaning frowned, berating. What are you yelling for? Kneel. Discipline attendant. Present. Deliver the punishment. Understood. In the end, not only did those people not manage to gain any favor, they each earned 10 strikes for violating the mandate against deception, plus a free bonus lash from Yuheng Elder. Come nightfall found Moran sprawled out on his bed. Even though medicinal ointment had been applied, his back was still covered in crisscrossing wounds, and it was impossible to even turn over. Let out a few sniffles, eyes watering from the pain. Oh, did my music go out? Oh. With his cute looks, this kind of whimpering made him seem like a fluffy, abused kitten. Unfortunately, his inner thoughts were nothing like those of a kitten. He gripped the blanket and bit into the bedsheets, imagining that bastard Chuaning in their place. He bit, stomped, kicked, ripped. His only comfort was that Shumei came to visit him with a bowl of handmade wontons. Under Shumei's gentle, compassionate gaze, Moran's tears poured even more fiercely. He didn't care for concepts like men do not cry. He loved to act spoiled in front of the person he liked. Does it hurt a lot? Are you able to sit up? Shumei sat at the edge of his bed, sighing. Shizun, his hand was really too heavy. Look at your wounds. Some of them are still bleeding. Warmth rose in Moran's chest, listening to these sympathetic words. He looked up with teary eyes and batted his eyelashes. Since Shimei cares for me so much, I don't feel any pain anymore. Oh, look at your condition. How can it not hurt? It's not like you don't know Shizun's temperament. Do you still dare blunder so in the future? Shimei looked at him with equal parts helplessness and sympathy, his expressive eyes gleaming in the candlelight like a warm spring. Moran's heart skipped a beat. He answered obediently, "Won't happen again, I swear." Who even takes your swear seriously anymore? Shimei scolded, but he was smiling. The wontons are getting cold. Can you get up? Just stay put. If not, I'll feed you. Moran was already half up, but at these words, he collapsed back down immediately. In both this lifetime and the last, Shimei's wontons were Moran's favorite. With wrappers thin like clouds and fillings delicate as cream, every bite was moist and satisfying, soft and savory, melting in your mouth and leaving behind a delectable aftertaste. Especially the soup, simmered to a rich milky consistency, sprinkled with bits of chopped green scallion and tender wisps of yellow eggs, and finally a spoonful of chili oil pepper stir-fried in garlic paste, warming you from the inside out when eaten. Shimei fed him attentively, spoonful by spoonful, saying, "I didn't add any chili oil today. Your injuries are too severe, and spicy food is not good for recovery. Settle for the broth, okay?" Moran stared at him, smiling, unable and unwilling to look away. "Everything you make is delicious, spicy or not." Flatterer, Shimei smiled back and picked out the poached egg in the soup. "Here's a runny egg as a reward. I know you like those." Moran laughed mischievously, a silly tuft of hair curling up from his head like a flower blooming. "Shimei." "Yes?" "Nothing. I just felt like calling your name." The hair tuft swayed back and forth. "Shimei." Shimei suppressed a laugh. "Just calling again?" Just calling your name makes me happy." Shimei hesitated for a moment, then gently felt his forehead. "Silly child, do you have a fever?" Moran chuckled and rolled over halfway to peek at him sideways, eyes brightly shining like they were full of stars. "I wish I could eat Shimei's wontons every day." He meant every word. After Shimei's death, Moran had always longed to taste his handmade wontons again, but that flavor was gone forever. At that time, Chuaning had not yet completely broken off all relations with him, maybe due to a guilty conscience, seeing the way Moran stayed kneeling in front of Shimei's coffin in a stupor. Chuaning had quietly gone to the kitchen, kneaded dough and chopped fillings, and carefully folded a few wontons, but Moran had seen before he could finish. Moran, who had just lost his true love, couldn't tolerate this at all. It had seemed to him as if Chuaning was mocking him, a clumsy attempt at copying, a deliberate stab. Shimei was dead. Chuaning could have saved him, but had refused to help, and afterwards dared to try to make Moran wontons in place of Shimei? Had he thought that would make Moran happy? Moran had rushed into the kitchen and knocked everything over. Plump white wontons had rolled all over the floor. "Oh, Chuaning's wontons!" He roared at Chuaning. "Who the F do you think you are? Do you have any right to use the things he used? To make the food he did? Shimei is dead. Are you happy now? Or do you have to hound all your disciples to death or madness before you're satisfied? Chuaning, there is no one left in this world who could make those wontons ever again. No matter how much you imitate him, you'll never even come close." Eating this bowl of wontons now, he was overjoyed and also deeply moved. He kept smiling as he ate, but his eyes grew slightly moist. Thankfully, the candlelight was dim, and Shimei couldn't see such minute details of his expression clearly. Moran said, "Shimei." "Thank you." Shimei paused for a second, then smiled gently. "Isn't it just a bowl of wontons? There's no need to be so formal. If you like it, I'll make it for you more often." Moran wanted to say, the thanks is not just for the wontons. Thank you also, in both this lifetime and the last, for being the only person to never look down on me, who didn't mind my origins, who didn't care about the 14 years I'd spent struggling to survive by any means, fair or foul. Thank you also, because if not for the fact that I remembered you back then, when I was first reborn, I probably would have killed Rongju, repeated a grave mistake, and walked the same bitter path as before. Thankfully, I was reborn before your death. I will definitely protect you this time. If anything were to happen to you, even if that cold-blooded demon Chuaning won't save you, I will. but there was no way he could say any of this. In the end, Moran finished the soup without saying anything, leaving not even a scrap of chopped scallion. He licked his lips as if still wanting more, dimples deep and charming, looking cute as a fuzzy kitten. Can I have some more tomorrow? Shumei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Don't you want to try something else? Won't you get tired of it? I'll never get tired of your wontons, as long as you don't get tired of me. Shumei laughed, shaking his head. I'm not sure how much flour is left. If there isn't enough flour for wontons, how about egg and sweet soup tomorrow? How about egg and sweet soup instead? Sweet soup instead. I remember you liked that one too. Okie dokie, as long as you make it, anything is fine. Moran was elated, so happy he could roll around hugging the quilt. Look how kind Shumei is. Chuaning, go ahead and whip me. There's a beauty to take care of me if I'm laid out on the bed, hehehe. Just thinking about that Shizun of his lit a flame of anger in the midst of his gentle sentiments. Moran dug resentfully into the crack between the bed and the headboard once again, cursing internally, What you hung of the night sky? What Beidou immortal? All BS. Chuaning, this lifetime just you wait and see. Author's note. Shumei making wontons. Moran, eat. Shizun making wontons. Moran, toss. Oh, Shizun. Moran from Shishong Peak wasted food and disrespected farmers' hard work. Is this the disgrace of human nature or the moral bankruptcy? Tune in for today's constitutional discussions. Reality, Shizun's cooking tastes really bad. His disciples have lost faith in the rare Shizun brand culinary products. Shizun is a bad cook confirmed. Okay, so it looks like that is the end of chapter 7. So what we saw was that Moran is pretty much just in bed in pain because he got whipped and beaten up. And although there were a bunch of disciples that wanted to curry favor with him by lying and saying that he helped them out, Chuaning used his Tianwen to get the truth out of them and pretty much just embarrass them all more. But we got to see Moran and Shumei being a little domestic. Shumei brought Moran some wontons, and Moran got to just reminisce about his past life and how much he loved these wontons, and we got to see like a soft, pitiful side of himself, and how much he has resolved himself to protect Shumei in this lifetime, and how he cautiously curses Shizun under his breath. Anyway, that's the end of today's read-along. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought of today's chapters. I will see you guys again next time. Have a nice day, guys. Bye-bye.